Good evening, everyone. Hello, this is Rudy Machiello, and we're about to start another episode of Chá Pedagógico. I don't know, but I have the feeling that we created quite a buzz this week because of this episode of Chá Pedagógico. So, hello, Anna. So, as Andre is joining us, please feel welcome. We're about to start another episode of Chá Pedagógico. This is Rudy Machiello. A couple of warnings before we actually start. This episode is going to be, of course, here on IGTV as usual. But you can also follow us on Spotify. But of course, it's in the format of podcast and not necessarily in the format of a video. So if you don't want to see your bearded, well, I know I'm not that bearded anymore, but our bearded faces, you can follow us on Spotify. All you got to do is search for Chá Pedagógico or Machiello Consultoria, and you're going to see this episode. We're going to upload this episode to Spotify soon. And you can also follow the channel and also enjoy previous episodes. But if you don't like podcasts, if that's not your thing, then what you can do is go to, hello Gabi, hello Guy, hello Guy. How are you doing, brother? So you can follow us on YouTube because this episode is also going to be on YouTube. So follow the channel. All you got to do is go to YouTube and search for Machiello Consultoria, and you're going to find the channel. There's a lot of episodes of Chá Pedagógico. We also have a content called Crossing the T's that we do from time to time. Andre's already here. Okay, Andre, come on in, brother. So, I think we're all set. Andre has just joined us.
Hey.
There he is.
What's up? Can you hear me okay, man? Or is there something wrong with my audio?
Yeah, the
there
sound. Yeah, you feel like you're like we're talking on a microphone and you're talking on a mobile phone. Oh, something's going on with the connection. So, oh, he's back. He's back.
I'll change this just a second. It'll be better.
Okay.
What about
That's
now?
Okay.
Is it better now?
Oh, much better.
Much better.
I don't know if
my headset, man.
Yeah, I don't know if it's my
I don't know why.
Yeah, I
That's
have no
weird.
idea either. So
I'm just gonna use my regular earphones, the non-professional ones.
Sometimes old school's better, brother.
Yeah, definitely. Like vinyl, right?
Vinyl's cool, but come on, it scratches, bro.
Yeah. So what's up, man?
Not much. And a couple of hellos as you're getting set there. So
yeah,
easy. Hello, Carol. Hello, Anna. Hello, another.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Marcia. Hello.
Welcome.
Welcome to another episode of Chá Pedagógico. I hope you're gonna have a great time. Yes. By the way, cheers.
Cheers, bro. Yes. And right. I'm wearing my Grogu t-shirt again because it's my favorite t-shirt nowadays. And the geek in me salutes the geek in you. And you have the Beatles, so I'm a huge fan.
I have the Fab Four here, brother.
Dude, I'm a huge fan of the Beatles. So
die-hard Fab Four fan here. So I was just telling them that this episode is, of course, is going to be just as awesome, just as the other episodes. But this one's going to be much awesomer. And I was telling them that
this one's special.
Yeah, and they're able to find episodes. This one and previous episodes on YouTube, IGTV, and Spotify. And one more thing, because you interrupted me. No, just kidding.
I'm sorry, man.
No, you didn't. I'm just kidding. Yeah, I'm just kidding. You didn't. And you're also going to find the previous episodes on EDC Rocks IGTV. Okay, guys? Because I was telling them about YouTube, Spotify, IGTV. You're going to find previous episodes there as well.
And let me tell everyone something. We actually started Chá Pedagógico in Portuguese, and I have evidence. It's on my IGTV, so don't watch it. No, it's actually cool. You can watch
do
it.
That.
But
watch it. Yes.
Then it's really cool. I don't know. At some point, we decided to go full English, which I don't know, to reach more people around the world, right?
We actually made a deal. It was a deal that we made. Remember?
Oh
depending
yes,
on the
if we
number of
had
viewers.
depending on the number of viewers. That's
Yeah,
true. That's true. I
yeah.
remember now, man.
And then
Awesome.
because you guys said it was really cool to have episodes in English, then we turned completely to English. And of course, because then we do have
Sure.
some people coming from different countries here. So
We do.
unfortunately,
Yeah.
Portuguese is not an international language, and English
Yeah.
is. So, but
Yeah.
that's the thing. If you're having a hard time understanding the episodes of Chá Pedagógico on YouTube, you can click on
Yeah.
closed caption, so you can
True.
actually watch
Yeah.
the episodes and also have the help of subtitles. It's not the
Yeah.
best though, but that's what we can do so far. And even for people, because this is something that Andre and I discussed at the end of last year, some
True.
improvements for people who actually have some hearing impairments, because we
That's
never
true. Yeah.
know. Maybe there are people, maybe
Yeah.
there are teachers somewhere. There's a teacher somewhere who has a hearing impairment or a hearing condition. So then on YouTube, there's this opportunity. You can watch the episodes and also follow it with the subtitles. But without further ado, my goodness, we started.
Let's
like,
get down to business, man. Yeah.
You know,
But this is so. Correct me if I'm wrong, man. But I was the one who told you to watch the movie, right?
Yeah.
You hadn't watched the movie before I told you, right?
I was trying to watch the movie like hell because, you know, as a linguist, everybody was saying, "Really, you got to watch." And I was like,
dude,
okay, I'm going to do
watch
that.
the
I got to do
movie.
that. But that's the thing, you know, with all the Marvel movies coming out, I was, you know, hung into Marvel because I'm
overwhelmed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I'm a huge Marvel fan. And now the episodes of WandaVision and now Falcon, and then last Friday with Zack Snyder's Justice League cut.
Snyder cut, man. Yeah. Which was pretty cool, right?
Yeah. And I was like, and then Andre gave me an ultimatum. He was like, watch it. And I'm saying, okay, let me do that.
You have to watch it, man. Yeah.
It happens to be a phenomenal movie.
Yes.
Hopefully, this is one of the things that we asked you guys to do from last week on, to watch this film, because first, it's a great sci-fi movie. If you like, if you're into sci-fi, that's a great sci-fi movie. Yeah. And second of all, because there is a there's a big peculiarity in this film, which is language acquisition.
Yeah, linguistics, man. It's all over the movie. Yeah.
Yes, and I'm like, I'm over the moon, because I'm like, wow, they made a film about my job. That was And
but then, if anybody here, if you're here and you haven't watched the movie, get ready for some major spoilers, because we're gonna tell you the end of the movie, and so maybe you shouldn't be here. But just a heads up there, you know.
All right, so I think we'd better start with an overview of what the film is all about, okay? So I'm going to talk a little bit about it, and then Andre, please go ahead and you do your magic, brother, because you also
I do have my notes here, man. Yeah.
Yeah, my notes are here, but you know,
awesome.
In a more compact way. So the film is about a linguist, and she starts having some dreams, what we believe to be dreams, and then she is kind of like summoned by the military because the Earth is being invaded by aliens, and she's summoned by the military because they want to communicate with these aliens, but they don't know how to do that. And since she is she's one of the professors in the university where one of the ships actually, well, they don't land, they are actually hovering some cities, right?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
That's really awesome, because every sci-fi movie that we see aliens invading the Earth, they actually land and make a huge mess. This one, no. So she's one of the professors in the university where the spaceship is hovering over, and she's summoned by the military to start making this first contact. Of course, they're summoning a lot of professionals, a lot of academics. She is summoned. And
including
also,
a physicist, right?
Yes, which is the role of
Jeremy Renner. Yeah.
Jeremy Renner, exactly. So he's a physicist. And there are two more guys that I actually don't remember, you know, because they're kind of like making fun of Amy Adams, because Amy Adams is the linguist, and they were like, "What are you doing here?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm the linguist," and they were like, "Oh, big deal." You know, I'm a big
She's the
shot,
most
whatever.
important piece of yeah, the whole puzzle, right? But
Exactly.
you know, something that really caught my attention, a couple of things that I still remember from watching the movie is that she's a one of the biggest references in the area, because the military, you know, the guy, I think his name is Colonel Weber or whatever,
Yeah.
is played by Forrest Whitaker, very awesome actor as well. And then he says, "You are on top of everyone's list of, you know, like best translators." He doesn't
Yeah.
even say linguists, right?
Yeah.
Translators, because she worked with Farsi in the Middle East and something like that. And then that's cool, because then you see some of her routine, and she is about to teach a lesson about Portuguese, right? So she opens a
Exactly.
lecture. So she's going to talk
Because
about
because she actually
Portuguese.
she
Yeah,
was, yeah, she was about to teach historical linguistics or something like that.
exactly, exactly. And
And
and and she mentioned something like, you know, how Portuguese and was pretty much linked to the idea of expressing art, right? And then she
yes,
talks
because
about
of,
Galicia and whatever.
yes,
Yeah,
because Portuguese, Spanish, French, Italian, they're all part of the Romance languages. And she's
exactly.
talking about arts. She's making this connection with arts and Portuguese.
Yeah.
And then the aliens come to Earth.
Yes, bro. And so that's the thing, right? The very first, I think the way they built the narrative, that you are watching what they're watching on TV, as you know, the whole plot develops,
Yeah.
and you never get to see the alien ship really, right? You only
Mhm.
get to see the alien ship when they get there, when Amy
Exactly.
Adams and Jeremy Renner, they get there, and you can see, like you said, they're not really landed, right? They haven't landed. They're kind of hovering over this field, like open
Yeah.
area,
Mhm.
and they look like shells, right? So they call them shells, and they're really dark, and nobody even knows at that, when they get there. They do know, but for some time they don't even know if they have any creatures inside or
Mhm.
anything like that, right? So they're still
Actually,
speculating how
yes,
they
actually,
got there,
they
right?
have no idea
Yeah,
what's going on inside the ships. They have no idea what's
yeah,
going on there. And because all they got to do was go halfway, they never got to communicate. That's when
yep,
they summoned Amy Adams and all these professionals. And
exactly.
then she finds out that not only the ships have aliens, they also have
Yes,
languages. They
yes, and that's,
communicate.
man, dude, that's so cool for us, you know, because I think this is really one of the big questions of our area.
Yeah.
Not just linguistics, applied linguistics, but also cognitive sciences, right? The relationship between language and evolution and thought and perception, and even, you know, expressing our physical existence or biological existence in the universe, right? So you should assume, from a neuroscientific perspective, from a neurobiological perspective, that different beings from different worlds, where everything is different, you know, the atmosphere, you know, uh, basically the physics around it, right? The types of plants, whether they do have plants or not, and
Yeah.
of course the beings are
And
going to be very different. So language will be very different as well,
yes,
right?
and even
Yeah.
air, because all we do with our phonological system here is expel air
Yes.
and intake air.
Exactly.
So if they don't have
Yeah.
some sort of atmosphere, if they don't have some sort of air, how are they
Yeah.
going to do that? You know, and then they find out that
Dude.
they do have a
Awesome.
language and they do
Yeah.
communicate in a certain way. And of course,
Yeah.
Amy Adams and Jeremy Renner, both characters, start learning the language. And
They
if you
do.
guys and if you guys had the opportunity to actually read the article that Andre and I wrote, you're going to see that a image that I put on the cover is the actual
Yes.
image of the movie, and that circle, it's
Yeah.
how they actually and that circle actually is a full
Yeah.
sentence. That is a
Yeah.
full
That's
sentence.
their written language, right? They call it
Yes.
a logogram, right? So
Yes.
pretty much like hieroglyphs and ideograms, and
Yes.
we do have some human languages that use pretty much the same system, but in a very different way, because
Mm-hmm.
like you said, they are able to create whole sentences and complex sentences by using one symbol. It's a very intricate symbol. And I think that the thing that really caught my attention is how it is created. Because whenever we are writing something, we follow a very linear process, right? And in our case, with Western languages, we start from the left to the right, and we have to write letter per letter, one after the other. And then we have to add a gap, space for the next word, right? And it's as if those aliens, they were able to know the beginning and the end of the sentence at the same time. And whenever they expel that, whatever, it's kind of like black smoke, right? That forms the logogram.
It's actually, it looks like an octopus's ink. It looks like an ink.
Exactly. They do look like octopus,
and they,
right?
Exactly. Yes, actually, we don't get to see the full aliens. Spoiler alert, number one, we never get to see the aliens. You only get to see the pods or the tentacles or their arms or whatever those are.
Yeah.
Because we never get to see them, the full body of those creatures, you know?
Yeah.
But what you said is really, really important, Andrew. Why is this really important? Because how can they create full sentences if they don't have if they don't follow any order, if they don't have any time marker, no nominal marker, they have absolutely no marker whatsoever. All they have is the circle that represents the whole sentence, and then they have some peaks and depressions, and all these all these peaks and depressions represent words. They represent words based on the film, of course. Okay, again, that language doesn't exist, at least as far as I know. That language doesn't exist.
That was very creative, right?
That was really cool.
The script writers, and it's actually based on a book by, I think, Tad Chiang or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's a very creative way of thinking about a language, how a language would exist, right?
Amazing. It was really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the last one that actually created a language was Star Trek when they created Klingon. They actually created a language.
That's true, yeah.
And now, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 years later, we have this film in a very smaller scale, but they created a language because Klingon, you know, it became a pop culture. But that's the thing, man. All these things.
Yeah.
But they actually made it.
Yeah. And Klingon is a great example. If you go back to Tolkien and The Lord of the Rings, for example, he was a linguist as well. He was into linguistics, and he created a language, you know, the elfish language and whatever. But again, they're kind of based on what we would normally refer to as the universal grammar of human languages. So they share a lot of interesting categories and concepts. And, you know, if you think about how it is arranged, it's pretty much very similar to what we use as humans, right? But if you think about, I don't know, Star Wars, that's why I'm wearing my Grogu t-shirt here. If you travel, you know, far, far away into the galaxy, and, you know, hyperspeed and whatever, and you arrive at a distant planet, and you have different species of different, you know, beings from different parts of the galaxy, and they all have different languages, and we don't really know very well if it's probably based on our own construction of language, because we use our own concepts of language to create new languages, right? But what caught our attention,
keyword, concepts.
Exactly.
Keyword here.
Concepts, and that's it. So, and then that's the thing with the logograms and those beings. They're called heptapods, right? Because they have 7 tentacles or whatever. So that language is completely different from anything we have ever seen, because it's very complex, and and apparently there is no correlation between what they say, or not say, but the sounds they produce, right? And what they write. So there's no correlation there. That's the thing. Our symbols, they have a phonetic meaning, a phonetic correlation, and then we can actually read our symbols and use our voice to produce them. So that's very cool, very interesting.
Yes, and remember my opening line here, a couple of minutes ago
Yeah.
was that Amy Adams were having some sort of dreams. But then,
Exactly.
as the movie
Yeah.
progresses, we find out that those were not actually dreams. Because once,
Hmm.
once she got to learn the new language or the alien language, she actually
Yeah.
perceives time in a
Yeah.
completely different manner. And that's why that's the
Yes.
sci-fi part of the film. So basically,
Woohoo.
because this
Yeah.
language doesn't have any kind of time marker, sorry, because this
Yep.
language doesn't have any type of time marker, she learns the language and she perceives times differently, making her able to actually travel through time.
Yes. She can see the future.
She can see the future and then
Dude.
she goes back in
Yes.
time, but she
Yeah.
sees the future. Actually, that's something that's not very clear. We don't know if she sees the
Exactly.
future or if she can
Yeah.
predict what is going to happen.
Exactly.
That's not very clear, but it
Exactly.
doesn't matter. That's not the
So,
case here. The thing is that that's
yeah.
the super cool part, the super nerd part here.
Yes.
She
That's why
travels
we're so hyped now, you know?
exactly. She travels through time just because she learned a new language, and that is the big question
Yes.
here. What about the
Yep.
notions that we have?
Yep.
Do we have any kind of correlation here between or perceptions in the language that we learn? Yes.
Yep.
A little bit about epistemic notions, which is one of the topics that we're going to talk about today. What are epistemic notions?
Yeah.
Well, very briefly, epistemic notions are the notions that we have based on the knowledge that we acquire. Every knowledge
Yep.
that we acquire becomes an epistemic notion. So, for example, I know triangles. Triangles
Yep.
is an epistemic notion. Why is that an epistemic notion? Because I have knowledge that whenever you have three sides forming three angles, we have a
Yep.
triangle. You know, and this
Yep.
epistemic notion can be generalized in many other types of objects. So, for example, if I see a branch on the sidewalk that came from a tree, I'm going to look at the branch and I'm going to say, oh, it's a triangle, even though it's not a perfect
Yep.
triangle, but we go
Yep.
beyond the notion of the real notion of a triangle, and we generalize
Exactly.
that. So that's an
Yeah.
epistemic
A
notion.
slice of pizza, for example, is
A
a
slice of
triangle,
pizza,
right?
it's a triangle.
Yeah.
And now I'm hungry. Thank you so much. I'm
Yes.
super hungry now, man. I want pizza.
Dude, I'm sorry, man. I actually had a snack before.
Oh,
But this is cool that, you know, we do have concepts that we are able to generalize. We can transfer things, you know, and if we think about this in a cognitive way, right?
yeah.
That's how important language is, right? So we are able to form certain concepts of our understanding of the physical world. And depending on the language that we use, so the language that we have, and we can have more than one language, right? If we're thinking in a monoglossic way,
Yeah.
or we can have just a huge linguistic repertoire.
Mhm.
But still, we're going to label the concept according to the language we're using. And then the question is, does the language that we use impact the things we can think of? And does it change? So if we learn a different language, does it change? Is it in a deterministic way or in a more relative way, let's say, you know? So it's a linguistic determinism and linguistic relativity, right?
Well, I wouldn't say it changes. I'd say it updates. I think updates is better. It's a better term for
Yeah.
this. Because if we think about change, oh, it changes the way we perceive triangles, for example. This is going to mean that,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to see a circle and the circle is going to become a triangle. No, that's not it.
Exactly.
Okay? That's
Yeah.
why I prefer update. Because when we say update, we're going to
Perfect.
expand the repertoire. When I say repertoire, I'm talking about notions now or concepts. All right? So we're going to
Yeah.
expand. So basically, we learned, okay, triangle. Good. And then let's
Yeah.
suppose that there's a language in the universe where they have several different subcategories of triangles. Actually, we do actually. That just came to me
Yeah.
because we do have several subcategories of triangles. This
We
helps
do.
us expand.
Isosceles, and I don't remember all of them, but yeah.
I have, we have the one with 90 degrees that I don't remember the
Yeah,
name.
that's
The one with 45.
Is it
the
a
one,
square triangle or something like that?
something
I'm
like
not
that.
sure,
Yes.
man.
Well, it doesn't matter. So we do have that.
Yeah.
So what do we first learn? We first learn triangles, circles, rectangles, and
Yeah.
squares.
Yeah.
Great. And then
Yeah.
as we grow older, we're going to expand that. So then our notions of
Yeah.
triangles are going to expand.
Definitely.
So
Yeah,
we're not going
that's
to be
it.
able, we're going to look at things now like, okay, that's a triangle. Great. But is that a
Yeah.
90-degree triangle? Is that a
Yeah.
60-degree triangle? Is that a 45-degree triangle? So
Yeah.
we're going to incorporate. So
Okay.
then
Yeah.
we are not going to see triangles with the same epistemic notions that we had before we
That's
learned
true.
that there are these three subcategories of triangles. And it's the same with
Yeah.
the language, because the language is going to make us expand our concepts, or sometimes incorporate concepts. For example,
Yeah.
I normally like to use this word because it's very easy for us to understand. The verb to tackle.
Yeah.
In Portuguese,
To tackle, that's a great one. Yeah.
we
Yeah.
don't have this verb in Portuguese. We don't have this action in
Yeah.
Portuguese. So all we have in Portuguese, something related to hug, something related to attack, something related to embrace.
Yeah.
We have assault, but we don't have to tackle. So then
Yeah.
when we teach our Portuguese students or our Portuguese learners this verb, we're getting the concepts that they already possess. And we're
Yep.
going to say, look, it's a combination of this, and that. That's the
Exactly.
tackle.
So
And
you're
then-
updating their concepts. Yeah. You're-
Exactly.
exactly.
So then,
Yep.
whenever they are watching, I don't know, sports, because this is more common in sports. Let's say that they're watching a rugby match. So they're watching
Yeah.
rugby on TV or American football, whatever. And of course, they're going to look at that. And they don't have to
Yeah.
produce, but they will probably think, oh, the guy is tackling the other. Oh,
Exactly.
God. It's not going
Yeah.
to be, in their minds, it's not going to be hug, it's not going to be embrace, it's not going to be attack,
Nope.
nor assault
It's
either.
tackle. Yeah.
It's tackle.
That's
So,
it.
yes, we do have some changes in the way we see and perceive things.
Definitely. And again, I was doing some research on the consultants they got for the movie. And there's this amazing linguist, and her name is Jessica Kuhn, and she graduated from MIT. So, kudos for her. And, and then she also works at McGill University in Canada. And she was one of the main consultants for the movie. And there's a scene that Amy Adams explains to Jeremy Renner the concept of superior worth, right? Superior worth hypothesis.
Yes.
And that's the idea that, and then of course you have the hardliners who believe that it determines what we are able to think. So the language that you speak will determine the things you can think. Or the ones who are more, leaned toward, relative view of that. They will say that it will shape or impact the things that we can think. And then this linguist, Jessica Kuhn, said that the superior worth hypothesis is actually not really accepted by many linguists in terms of, your language will determine what you can think of or not. Because if that were true, we wouldn't be able to think new thoughts and create new words, if you think about it, right?
Yes.
That's the bottom line, basically, right? And we're creating technology all the time. We're thinking of solutions, and that's human creativity, right? But then one thing is cool. Well, if their language influences how they think, so if we are thinking about it in a relative way, right? So what does that tell us about how they think? If they can make full sentences, very complex sentences, from beginning to end in like 2 seconds, by spraying their ink, their dark black smoke, and then make a logogram, right? That means that the way they think of time, the way they conceptualize time has to be different from the way we do, because wise, they wouldn't be able to do that, or they wouldn't use that type of language to express that. And that tells us something, that gives us some clues, to whether they are, let's say they belong to our sort of 3D reality or not, right? So this is something very cool that we can explore. But again, we do agree that languages will influence the things we can think, that there's definitely a correlation there. And then depending on the language you speak and the language that your culture values, that means that you are going to hear more things more often than other things because they're part of who you are, your cultural identity. And of course, that's going to have an impact on your cognition, on the things you can think of, right?
Yes, absolutely correct. And one thing has to be made clear here, because we know I had a lot of haters in one of the articles that I posted a couple of weeks ago.
Yes, I saw that, man.
Just because I said that language has no, thought has no official language. Yes, we're not saying that our thoughts have an official language. What we're saying is that language is going to give a body to what we think. Because again, we don't think in a given language. We think about a language. So we look at the language, we see which part is going to do the job. Yes, this serves to me, this doesn't serve, this fits, this doesn't fit. And then we're going to use it in order to give a body to what we have here in our minds. For those listening to us on Spotify, here in our minds, I'm pointing at my head here.
Exactly.
And then, of course, because you said, oh, what about the perception of time? Well, we do have some markers, some time markers in our language. Both Portuguese. So let's think about Portuguese and English, because we both have time markers. For example, we have modal verbs, modality.
We do.
We do have this modality. In order
we have verb tenses.
We have verb tenses.
And verbs of time.
Exactly. And we do have some order that is part of the language. Whenever they created the language, the first person who actually came up with this person said, okay, so this is the order that we have to follow in order to use this language. And we have the order. So let's say SVO, and subject, verb, object. All right.
Exactly.
But and of course, for us who speak Portuguese, that also respects the SVO order, and we're also used to having time markers throughout the sentences or in the language. This part for us is really easy to understand. It's easy to produce. We don't have any problems. Okay.
Exactly.
But imagine you have to learn a language that doesn't have that. So let's say I don't know Chinese. I know nothing of Chinese. The only word I know in Chinese is "shei shei," which is thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
That's the only thing I know in Chinese.
Yeah.
But I know that they don't have the same time modality that English and Portuguese have.
True.
So imagine for these guys learning a language that do have these markers. And if I'm not, and when I say that, because I've read something that for them, it doesn't have to be, actually, it's not SVO. This SVO doesn't exist.
Exactly.
If I'm not wrong. It's OSV or OVS or something, but object comes first,
Yeah.
And then you say, whoa, what? So they see this chronology, air quotes here, they see this chronology completely different from how we see that. So for us, we see, okay, first this, then that, then this.
Exactly.
And we have this engraved in our minds. And when we face a language that doesn't follow this rule, we're like, okay, I'm lost. It's like when we are learning Latin.
It's harder.
Latin.
Definitely,
Latin, for example, Latin is a word that it's a language that has different markers. For example, plural markers.
Definitely.
And they don't necessarily respect the SVO.
That's true. Similarly to German, actually. Yeah.
German. So it's hard for us. And that means that we see time in a way, the concept, the notion that we have is like chronological, one after the other. And then if you talk to a German, or I don't know, someone who speaks German fluently,
a Japanese person as well, that they have a similar structure in terms of time.
Exactly. So for them, maybe things don't necessarily, and when I say things, not language, things in the literal definition of this word things. Things don't have to be one after the other, because wait a minute, I don't need to think like this. That's not the concept I have, because the concept I have, the body that I give to this concept doesn't have to respect this. So that's not.
So the order is, that's the thing. The order in some human languages is different. We're talking about syntax, right? So if you think about constructing a sentence and where each word goes, there are interesting differences in human languages, but still one word comes after the other. It could start with a subject and then maybe an object and then the verb at the end, like German. So you will say like, I will travel to Spain. You say, I will to Spain travel. That's the order that Germans use, and Japanese is pretty similar. But again, the way you produce the words in written language and also in speech is one word after the other, right? You cannot produce two words simultaneously. You cannot produce multiple words simultaneously like the heptapods do, right? And that kind of, so I always try to think of analogies to make it easier for people to get it. It's kind of like music, if you think about a harmonic instrument and a melodic instrument. Like when I play the flute, and I can play the flute and the guitar, for example, I have to play one note after the other because I have to blow into the tube, and then it vibrates the air, and then one sound comes after the other chronologically. But if I get my guitar and I play a chord, I can play 4 sounds at the same time. They come all together at the same time. And if you think about this, what the heptapods are doing, it's kind of like playing the harmony. They're playing many sounds at the same time and forming complex sentences, kind of like if they were showing as a picture of something. So if you think about the chronology of books, like telling a story, a narrative in a book, how do you describe a scene? You have to one phrase after the other. You say there was something in the room, and then somebody came in. And then if you just take a picture of that using a camera, then you have all the elements at the same time with this one thing. And that's pretty much what they do. But they do that using the logograms. They're kind of like algorithms, right?
Yes.
So they're like a representation of a very complex reality of, multiple things together, but in one symbol. And then that's how intricate the symbol is. Like Rudy said, they're kind of, peaks and depressions that you can see are related to words, and then, how they connect. So this is very interesting. We would never be able to do that because that's not how we think of time.
Yes.
We have to put one word after the other. If we do it in speech or in written language, they can do it all together, right?
Yes, and that's why sometimes it's hard. Actually, in English, because it comes from German, the German language, they change the order when you're using the verb to be and you want to ask a question, all you're going to do is put the verb in the beginning. That's why some of our students, or many of our students, have a hard time remembering that, because for them it doesn't make any sense. Like, wait a minute, so I'm going to put the verb in the beginning of a sentence? That doesn't make any sense, because it breaks the time concept that they have. That's the time notion that they have, and it breaks it. It breaks this paradigm.
Yeah.
But
dude,
again,
I had a hard time learning German because of the verb at the end, But then after time you learn it, right?
Of course you do, because of repetition and exposure, and we do have a special episode of Chá Pedagógico just talking about exposure and all these things.
Definitely, yeah.
All you're going to do is check on YouTube or throughout our IGTVs here on Instagram, or take a look at Spotify. It's also there. You're going to have an episode on this. But that doesn't mean just because Amy Adams learned the language and she actually kind of like mastered the language, she changed the way she sees time. And that's why she was able to actually travel through time. That's probably not going to happen. We don't know, but I don't think that's how it's going to work.
I don't see it happening, dude, because there's a physical problem there that we can't get past that. You know, it's like we live in a 3D reality. So we have length, width, and height basically, and we can move in any direction within those three axes, right? And then according to physics, the fourth dimension would be time. So if we were able to move through time as they probably do, those beings, they do, that means we would exist in every possible time at all times, which means that we could just simply teleport, for example. We could just go and we could see things. If I were a four-dimensional being, I would look at my wardrobe and I could see all the possible forms of my wardrobe. So I could see it with the doors open and closed at the same time. So I could actually see through the door because I could see everything together. Like vision. We were talking about one division, right? So why is vision able to cross, walls, right? To walk through walls because it's probably a four-dimensional being, right? So
I'm going to remember now the days that I was taking engineering, and my first that's my first degree, and we do have the axis here, okay, the three-dimensional axis.
Exactly.
Here, okay, so we have the y-axis, the x-axis, and here is the z-axis. Z-axis.
Exactly.
Okay, we don't have a fourth dimension. We don't have a fourth axis. If we had a fourth axis, because remember the Cartesian plan, they all have a similar point. They all come from the same mark, the same landmark, for instance, which is this point in my hand here. Okay, I'm sorry, guys, on Spotify, you cannot see this. Okay?
Rudy is doing something weird with his hand now, but it's actually we can understand. We can understand.
A fourth dimension would be a dimension that goes through this point, this landmark, connect. Oops. Everything here. All right. So the fourth dimension will go through this landmark and connect these three dimensions.
Exactly.
And even though we do say, we live in a 3D world. We live in a 3D world in language. Many people still think that we don't have a third dimension, which is not completely correct. Because, because, for instance, if we think about the X and Y axis here, so we have Y here, X here. Consider this X axis here as syntax, and the Y part, the Y axis, is going to be lexis, okay? Vocabulary, words. Then, based on the words that we include here, we're going to start creating what? Sentences. But there is a third axis that very few people remember, which is what? Intention. So that's the third axis. The intention. The intention is the third axis. All right?
That's true, man. Yeah.
So we do have a three-dimensional language as well. We have words, we have syntax, and we have intention. Okay?
Perfect.
And that's the time that we have in language. That's how we actually see language. It doesn't matter the language that we are talking about here. Actually, I'm thinking about the languages that I know of.
Yeah, most languages are like that.
Okay? So
we do, but there's a case. I mean, there are a few cases of Aboriginal sort of indigenous languages that they don't really think in terms of verb tenses and time, like distant future, and like I mentioned in the article, the Pirahan, right, here in the Amazon, and they have only a few sounds to build their language, and they really live in the moment, right, because they don't they don't really think
That's so
forward.
poetical.
Yeah, that's really, you know, they live in the moment, because that's why, you know, when Dan Everett, the linguist, came to evangelize those people, because he was a missionary, right? And he came to Brazil to sort of, you know, teach them about Jesus. You know, that was his mission. He realized that they couldn't grasp the concept of eternal life because it was too far in the future for them. And so their brains had been sort of wired to live in the moment, right? And then, so if you contrast with the haptopods and with Amy Adams, right? What does it mean? So it means that the haptopods, they live in a four-dimensional universe, so they can actually access a higher dimension, and then they can see time as one of those axes, right? So they're going to see time. It's almost like time is a physical axis that they can just walk to. So I choose to walk to the left, so I'm going back a couple of years in the past. I choose to walk to the right, I'm going to the future, right? The problem is Amy Adams cannot access the fourth dimension, you know? So even if she could speak the language of aliens, that wouldn't give her the capability, let's say, to travel back and forth. And that's how things get a little complicated, you know, because then you can see that the dreams that Rudy mentioned, they're actually memories from a future that hasn't happened yet. So for example, she has a daughter. The beginning of the movie, which is very poetic, it takes about 2 minutes. It's about when her daughter was born, the life of her daughter, and when she died because she had a rare disease, right?
Yes.
And then there is a moment that she really grasps the language and she really understands the language. She has a very close encounter with the aliens. That's when she's kind of getting very fluent, right, at the language. And then she realizes that Jeremy Renner is her husband, and she had a baby with Jeremy Renner. And then she realizes that she knew her daughter was going to be born with this rare disease, and she still decided to have her daughter. And then that's the thing. Did she decide, or could she do anything about it? Because knowing the future doesn't mean you can do anything about it, right?
She was grieving something that she hadn't lived yet, because she was grieving the death of her daughter, but her daughter hadn't been born yet. So she was grieving something that was going to happen in the future. And that's not a great way to teach, you know, time tenses, verb tenses, verb tenses.
Yes.
You know? Whenever we teach, we use a timeline for perfect tenses. Use a normal timeline. Don't use this film as an example, because we're going to screw everything up.
Oh, everybody's going to get confused.
Oh my God, my students didn't get it, you know. But that's the thing. She learned how to actually go through time by using the language, because there is a moment there are several moments actually that in the film where they are communicating with the aliens, and you can actually see what they're saying. So they developed some sort of software that decodes whatever they're saying. And you realize that they have a list of words, because what did they do in that circle? They just produce words, just words. They don't have, you know, and also in the article that we wrote, if you had a chance to read it, it's there. If you haven't read it yet, take a look at the article that Andre and I wrote.
It's a cool article, yeah.
It's a very nice article. Don't forget also to comment and to share the article with your peers, okay? But in the article, I say that all they have to do is to produce words like I, that, yesterday, see. Boom. It's there.
All together.
All together in the circle.
That's a simple example. It gets even more complex than that, right?
It gets super complex, you know, which a bunch of words, no time marker whatsoever. And then the software, the software recognizes the words, and then what do they have? They don't actually explain, but they found a way to put everything together in more chronological sequence linguistic sequence so that we could understand what they were saying. And that's the time marker, the linguistic time marker that we have that the aliens don't. And that's basically what changes Amy Adams' character's notion of time, epistemic notion of time. Because she was like, wait a minute, now that I understood that, why am I thinking, one after the other? When I have, because in this language, I don't have to think one after the other. I'm free to think the way I want. So I'm going to incorporate this in my life.
Yes.
That's it, man. But it's impossible to time travel,
But that's the thing, I mean, maybe they can time travel because, and again, there are many assumptions here. If they are four-dimensional beings, they don't even have to have a technology to time travel because they are present all over time and space at the same time, it's a very weird concept for humans to understand. But if they're not four-dimensional beings, they might have technology to time travel because according to Einstein's theory of relativity, it is possible to warp space-time, the fabric of space-time, and then wormholes. Stephen Hawking talks about that. So there are many ways that we could actually possibly travel through time. But one thing that is pretty interesting to discuss is, would we ever be able, us humans, to understand such a language, given that our perception of the physical world is determined by our biological body? So if you think about how we look at things, how we perceive things in the universe, how we were born, wired to understand the laws of physics that we created. I mean, we discovered them. We didn't create them. We discovered. So would we ever be able to see time in a different way? And then I started thinking of one example that might help answer this. I think we cannot really fundamentally change how we experience time because it's tied to our physical existence, right? To our biology, our physiology. But if you think about it, we can actually predict the future using maths, right? Think about equations and formulas that we have created. And if you think about math as a language, just for illustration, you can actually calculate, for example, as an engineer, if you're going to build parts for whatever machine, you actually know the type of resistance that they offer depending on the materials. You can actually calculate how a building will look like before you start building the building, and then it's going to be exactly like you planned because we have the maths to do that. So we are kind of predicting the future in that sense,
And not even that, also in language, I'm going to use your example in linked to language, but whenever a company is developing some sort of product, they don't necessarily have to start from the very first part of the product. So for instance, cars, they don't have to start from the steering wheel. They don't have to start producing the steering wheel. They can start producing, okay, so first I'm going to produce the bumpers, and then I'm going to start producing the exhausters, and now I'm going to, what about the engine? Oh, the engine is not ready yet, so let's not, start producing the engine, so let's produce the seats. So they don't have a chronological sequence to do that. Of course they do. They do have, they do have an assembly line. They have to respect the assembly line, blah, blah, blah. But that's the thing. There isn't like, okay, first this, then that, then this.
Dude.
No, it's like a puzzle.
That's the key thing, right? It's like, and if we didn't have the ability to understand the future and what something will become, we wouldn't be able to do something like that. We would have to always follow the same sequence to have that result, the outcome, right? So humans can actually, we know nowadays through, physical predictions, for example, that our sun in a couple of billions of years is going to exhaust all its fuel, and it's going to sort of implode. It's going to grow bigger, probably wipe out some of the planets, including our own, maybe. It's going to get as close as, and then it's going to sort of implode and become a smaller star. And this is something we can actually say, and it's pretty certain, and it's like billions of years in the future because of this language that we understood, we created maths, you know, to understand the physical world. And that's, again, so that's kind of, it relates to what the haptopods can do probably. So it's as if they are at the next level of mathematical understanding. They have very precise equations of how the universe work. And then if they put all of those things together, they can really predict to details, like very fine details, what's going to happen 3,000 years in the future.
Yes.
You know, so that's the thing.
And you know what? Can we do this in languages? Yes. We do this with language all the time. We plan ahead, even if, of course, when we're talking about our first language, we don't actually realize that we're doing this. But we plan ahead what we're going to say. But it's like super fast. But we do have some sort of planning. We have to have some sort of planning. Otherwise, we're all going to, you know, utter isolated words out in the air.
Yeah.
And then people are going to be like, what are you talking about? You're not making any sense. Are you okay? Are you feeling all right?
When you get lost in the middle of a sentence, like,
yeah,
right?
Like, well, no, yeah. So we do this with language as well. We do have some, of course, we don't. I don't want to get stuck in the time notion in language because that was topic number 2, and we're about to finish here. We have only 4 minutes, but we do this in language, and yes, it's possible to expand the epistemic notion of time that we have learning the language. Actually, it's possible to expand whatever epistemic notion that we have with language, because this language is only going to represent what we already, the conceptualizations that we already possess. It's it's like a garment for our thoughts, and not the other way around.
I love that. I love that word, man.
It's garment.
Yeah.
Yes,
That's
it's a garment. You know, so
you're dressing your thought according to the language you're using, right?
Yes, and
that's
again,
it.
That doesn't mean that our thoughts have an official language. We're not saying this.
Yes.
Whatsoever. And if you have a problem,
and you know,
go to Facebook and talk to me.
Talk to Pinker too, you know, let him know that. So,
I don't want to go back to this beef. I think those guys on Facebook was his minions.
And you know, there are a bunch of students here, my students from PUC, who had the privilege of listening to Rudy talk about his article. So everyone just go to Machiello Consultoria and read his article, and EFL magazine as well. Our Thoughts Have No Official Language. It's awesome. And also read our article about this movie. And one of the things, you know, because we're running out of time, that I really wanted to mention is that, so Amy Adams realizes that she has the key to stop the war, the impending war against the aliens, because she knows that 18 months from when they're evacuating the location, the site where the aliens were, in Montana, somewhere in the US, that she actually realizes that she has already talked to the Chinese General Sheng, who wants to attack the aliens, right? And then that's going to create a cataclysmic event or a domino effect that is probably going to lead to our own annihilation or whatever. We don't know exactly. But then she knows that she has talked to this guy 18 months after, because she has already stopped that from happening. And she realizes that, so she retrieves this memory from the future of talking to him in a party. So it was a ceremony. So there were, it was a global summit or whatever, and everybody was celebrating peace and whatever. She realized that she had the general's private phone number, and that the general had told her something that his wife told him when she was about to die, right? Her last words. And that made him believe that he really had to kind of step back and not attack the aliens, right? So this, again, this would not be possible because of the physical constraints, right? Of, you know, she wouldn't be able to travel because of our physical existence in a 3D reality. But again, it might be possible in the future. We could even, there could be 4-dimensional beings right now, right here.
Yes.
And we wouldn't be able to see them because they are at a higher level of existence, right?
Exactly. And we'll have to wait several billions of years to see if we can actually do this or not. And this brings us to the end of this episode. Whoa, this flew like super fast.
Dude, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Yes.
We have to finish this. So guys, once again, thank you so much for joining us, for your questions, for interacting with us here, typing here. A couple of reminders though, this episode is going to be on IGTV here on Marcelo Consultoria, but you can also follow us on Spotify. We're going to upload this episode sooner, but you can go there. You're going to enjoy previous episodes of Chá Pedagógico on Spotify. Type Chá Pedagógico and you're going to find us. You can watch previous episodes of Chá Pedagógico also on YouTube. Search for Marcelo Consultoria on YouTube. You can also watch previous episodes of of Chá Pedagógico on EDC Rocks IGTV here on Instagram as well. So follow EDC Rocks, follow Marcelo Consultoria. Andre, thank you so much, brother.
Dude, I had a lot of fun talking about this episode. I'm still wearing my, Grogu t-shirt, to honor all the aliens we might encounter in the near future. And maybe, who knows, we'll learn how to access a 4th dimension, right? So, peace, man. Yes.
Yes, live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper. Yes.
Andre, thank you, brother.
Bye-bye, everyone. Have a great evening and, be cool. Yeah, Yoda rocks. Yeah.
Yes, Yoda rocks. He does. No, rocks, Yoda does. Something like that.
That's true. See
Guys,
you, man.
thank
Bye-bye.
you so much. Bye-bye.